Hi everyone, this is Professor Liebert. I just wanted to give a brief video about our work coming up for this week on general rhetoric. So last week we talked about world rhetorics as a way to get a sense of how rhetoric was thought about in different cultures and perspectives other than classical Greek and Roman rhetoric. And during the presentations, we got a good sense of how all sorts of perspectives on communication or persuasion, rhetoric, all these different things changed depending on where we were. There were similarities, there were differences, thoughts about the role of logic, the role of ethics, the role of what you say or what you don't, the role of the audience or the listener, how important listening is or is not, the context in which rhetoric was really thought about the most in the royal court in one-on-one situations versus large trial atmospheres that the Greeks and Romans often thought about, to more ceremonial places and everyday practices in a variety of contexts and places. So rhetoric has a lot of perspectives and it changes depending on the culture, right? So this week, what we're going to think about is in the context of all the situatedness of rhetoric. Uh, Two writers are thinking about if it's possible to have something called a general rhetoric, meaning is there some way to think about rhetoric that really touches all people, and even non-people, even animals. So George Kennedy in the early 90s, who's someone who was very one of the early scholars really thinking about rhetoric in many different contexts beyond the Greeks and the Romans, which, for that time was actually a big deal. Now, not so much. But for that time, it was. And Kennedy wanted to learn more and wanted to get together with other scholars to figure out how other parts of the world, other times of the world thought about rhetoric, and to contrast it with a lot of the more traditional Western rhetoric of the Greeks and the Romans and so on, and medieval Europe as well. The way he thinks about it is in terms of energy, something that maybe is prior to intention, prior to speech, not necessarily exclusive to humans, something animals also do. So you want to frame rhetoric in this kind of way as a way to kind of figure out, is there something about rhetoric that is general, that is just universal in some way, even though it's not purely universal. The more concrete you get, the closer and closer you get to formal and informal cultural practices, but maybe something underneath that or beyond that or more universal. Does such a thing exist for rhetoric? That's what he was trying to take up. More recently, Thomas Rickert, who we'll read on Wednesday, is also interested in general rhetoric. He's kind of responding to Kennedy, and he's also taking up critiques of Kennedy, critiques mostly based on, where do you start when you try to define rhetoric? Kennedy was still using a very, traditional sense of rhetoric, trying to kind of view other cultures and places through that Western lens as a way to compare and contrast, which many people found limiting, and boxes out other ways of thinking about human interaction using symbols, in many of the ways that we kind of read about last week. So Rickert is trying to, he uses something, the idea of survival and something like more closer to like evolution and stuff, in some really interesting ways that kind of tries to address some of those more cultural critiques that were made against Kennedy, right? So we'll see how successful he was. That'll be sort of what we're interested in this week. I mean, is there such a thing as a general rhetoric that is, transcends culture and background and history, or is that just not possible? So that's what we're going to talk about this week. That's what we're going to read about. So for this week, you'll read the Kennedy piece for Monday. You'll make your annotations by noon. You'll do your discussion post by 11:59 p.m. Monday night, as you've been doing. And you will also, in addition, at the end of the day on Monday, you'll sort of finish up the Beyond Greek and Roman Rhetoric presentation assignment. You'll do the written portion of that assignment that just sort of reflects about like what you learned, what the experience was like, and how you contributed it to your group, so we can kind of keep track of who did what. So that's for Monday. In addition, if you had not signed up already for the discussion lead, the respondent lead, I think we're calling it, each week. Please sign up. The first group doing that will be this Wednesday on the Kennedy and the Rickert readings. All this information is on our course website in the schedule, and more information about assignments is in the major assignments part of our course website. If you have any questions, we're here to answer them. But I think you are well set up to do your work. And then Wednesday, of course, too, which I didn't mention, we're reading the Rickert, and you do the annotations for Rickert as well by the time we get to class. And yeah, we're excited to hear from the first group. Hope you have a good week. I'll see you soon.